And I'm smiling, big smile. It's a great pleasure to welcome Sharon Orshalimy, who will share with us her talk about the personal and the political and the theoretical of the silence topics researched in using mixed methods. Sharon, the reason I'm smiling is because Sharon is a PhD candidate at the Health Systems Management Department, which happens to be my department, at the School of Public Health in Ben-Gurion University. She has a master's in women and gender studies from Bar-Ilan University. And also she is an activist who actually works with family planning among women, and especially with young women. So it's a great pleasure to pass you the floor, Sharon, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and research with us this afternoon. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you very much. I have to say that I'm very excited and very nervous lecturing in English and doing it via Zoom when I am not in Israel. I am talking to you all from Savannah, Georgia. And I don't have a Southern accent, but my Southern accent just came out when I said Savannah. So it's 8 in the morning here, and I hope this talk of mine will be of interest. I have to say that it's not going to be a lecture that will be very theoretical or methodological. It is a lecture that combines a lot of my thoughts regarding my present and past research, and a little bit like Maya said before, trying to justify qualitative research as a young scholar. So I am going to read from what I wrote because this is in English, and usually when I speak in Hebrew it just goes like that, and I talk really well. So do I have the ability to share a screen? Yes, okay. Where is it? Okay. It's a very short, it's not a big presentation. I just wanted things to be in front of you when I talk. And as Paula said, I am also, I'm also an activist. And as you can see, I wrote here that my first self-definition would be a PhD candidate, but I'm also a sexual educator and a reproductive rights activist. And it was important for me to put it on the main presentation, because I think I cannot do one without doing the other. And this might be the purpose of this talk, because I called this lecture the personal, political, theoretical approach, because it's combined in the work I do. Just 1 minute, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do like that for a minute. Is there a way, I have a question, a technological question. Is there a way to do, now, do you still see my slides right now? Okay, good, okay. Okay. Preparing this lecture, I thought a lot about what would a PhD candidate whose only research done before was a small MA master's regarding women's experience with vaginal pain, have to say in a conference regarding methodological learning in a mixed method approach. What can my talk contribute to our gathering today? As you can see, I've started my talk, and also what I did before I started my formal talk. I started with doubting my abilities and my contribution to the field. I feel like it's a stereotypical woman who doesn't always feel this is her place she belongs to. But while I was writing down this talk in my head, and it was in my head for many weeks until it came out to the computer. I understood I have some things to say. I hope that my words will be helpful to future women researchers, young scholars, who sometimes doubt their research when they come to do qualitative or mixed methods approach. Therefore, my name is Sharon Orshalimy, and I'm a feminist scholar regarding silence topics, researching silence topics regarding women's sexuality. I drew this lecture's topic from the second wave feminism argument that the personal is political. Hence, there is a connection between personal experience and larger social and political structures. I just added the theoretical. So what will I talk about today? I will talk about my own reflective thoughts about my journey as a young scholar in the field of women's sexual health. When I applied to the PhD program at the School of Public Health, where Paula also teaches, here at Ben-Gurion University, I came from a feminist qualitative department of women and gender studies at Bar-Ilan University. Qualitative research was set on a pedestal. That was the bon ton, and that was what I knew as a scholar. That was research, and of course, that will be the research I'm about to do. Nothing else came to mind. Suddenly, when I came to the School of Public Health, all I heard and learned about was statistics, statistics, and more statistics, except for Paula, of course, and my mentor, Nadav. I asked myself, am I in the right place? The answer to this question will be answered during this lecture. But first, I want to talk about the importance of listening to women's voices. My master's thesis topic was heterosexuality, pain, resistance, women's experience with vulvodynia, which already was a women's health issue. I just didn't frame it as a women's health issue. Vaginal pain was one of the most taboo topics in medicine, in women's health, and in sexuality research and academia. I was one of little people doing research in Israel about this, and I was the only sociologist and not a clinician writing about this. When I started my research, social media was just picking up, and I thought it would be very difficult to recruit women to come and tell me their experience regarding their pain. I established a personal blog, and I published my personal story. Then I published a counter column to an article published in a widespread online platform. It was Ynet. This doctor wrote a column in Ynet about vulvodynia, and I got very angry about what was written. So I wrote a counter column and they published it. And I said two very simple things. Sex is not just intercourse, and women who have vaginal pain are not broken. At the end of this column, I wrote my contact info for women to reach out so I can get them to be part of my research. What happened next astonished me. My email was blasted and I got about 100 mails, which was a lot for this topic that never talked about. That was the first time I deeply understood the great need these women had in sharing their stories and the choice they made of being heard. Interviewing 16 women made me come to this conclusion a second time. Women's voices are important, and moreover, their words, perspectives, and experiences have value to science, to policy, and especially to their own path towards healing. Participating in this research had a therapeutic aspect for the women who were interviewed. And I think we talk a lot about it in qualitative methodology classes. Listening to women's voices brought great responsibility. I was on a mission. When these conclusions sunk in, I fully acknowledged the power of feminist research regarding silence topics and the importance of researching it in an academic field and not just in an activist field or a professional field like a sexual educator. Then a switch happened. I was no longer just an activist or sexual educator. I'm also a scholar, and I can do both. It goes together. The separation between activism and academia were never apart in my head or in my work. It always came together. It was clear to me that action research and knowledge creation situated in the field is the core of my personal, political, theoretical passion. One second. And I don't know if you can see, but I wrote echoing what women think, feel, and say. When I came to my current research regarding family planning policy and contraceptive use among adult women living in Israel, I started out with the hunch that once again, I might touch a sensitive topic. But the hunch wasn't as taboo. The topic wasn't as taboo as my master's topic. So I thought, okay, a lot of women use contraception. It's something like, it's part of a daily health practice women do. It's sensitive because it has to do with sex, but okay, not that silenced as vaginal pain. Little did I know, hardly no research has been done in Israel regarding what women choose and what they use to prevent pregnancies. For the last 3 decades, no data has been collected, and nothing has been written about how the health policy looks or the counseling practice of healthcare providers looks. And does it meet women's needs? So during the 70s, the 60s, and the 80s, there is writing about this, but the last quantitate survey was done in 1988. Since then, the field has changed completely with access to major other types of contraceptions, and nothing has been collected in Israel. And we don't know if what does happen between healthcare providers and women meet women's needs. And in my field and like where I was working, I felt like this topic was, and I'm literally translating from Hebrew, I felt this topic was brewing, was bubbling beneath the surface and was about to explode. Social media was bursting with women being unhappy with their contraceptive choice. A big article came out in Haaretz newspaper about the end of the pill era, and I knew something was up. I have just enrolled in the Health Systems Management and Policy Department, and I knew I wanted to write about contraceptive use. But I did not grasp the importance this research will have on the women participating in the research, and on the influence it might have in the field. Now, Paula, I don't know if you identify, but our department is very quantitative oriented approach. It shifted, but like the history of the department is very quantitative. And again, I sat there.
Work in progress.
It's work in progress, exactly. It's like Paula, me, and Nadav, like every seminar, say something to like, and again, I found myself asking, did I do the right choice? Was this the place for me? Coming from the Women and Gender program, I felt like an outsider who did not belong, and I felt like the type of research I wanted to do might be considered less than statistics or epidemiology research. But my way of coping with that is to dismiss statistics and say, why does that interest me, numbers? Because it doesn't explain the feelings of women, the perspective of women. Why do I care about numbers? Which was a bad way of coping. I felt like I had to prove the importance of qualitative research to show its scientific importance and validity. Then I decided, with my mentor's advice, and I thank them for that, to do a mixed methods approach. They said, and they were right, that collecting this new data will innovate and renew knowledge, but also will enhance my ability to affect policy. Mixin will strengthen my argument and conclusions and knowledge. I decided to take that challenge, and trust me, this was not, and still not, an easy challenge for me. The data collecting process or methods were semi-structured interviews with 3 target audiences. 28 semi-structured interviews were conducted with women who are the main consumers of family planning services. 13 semi-structured interviews were conducted with healthcare providers, and 4 semi-structured interviews were conducted with stakeholders in the field. Plus, 2,800 women completed the full online survey. It was actually 3,600, but completed after I cleaned the data was 2,800. Just to make a little bit, to frame it in context, this happened while COVID started. So everything, a lot of my methodology changed because I wanted to interview many people from the health system ministry, and there was no one to talk to because the epidemic broke. So I kind of changed my target audiences in the stakeholders one, but still, I managed to do all this research. My mentors and I were debating which part of my research should be first. I wanted to publish the survey because I was excited to see if my hunch was right. I wanted to publish the survey first. But my mentor said, Nihaya, my other mentor said, start with the interviews. You'll learn a lot about what you should ask in the survey. It will emphasize and sharpen your questionnaire. And she was right, because things I didn't even think about to ask came up when I interviewed women. Now, in this part I will talk only about the interviews made with women. I'm not going to talk about the interviews I had with stakeholders or healthcare providers, because it's a bit different with the mixed methods approach, because the mixed methods was only women in the survey. While recruiting women for my research, I again encountered to women's urge to talk about the topic of the research. I wanted to interview 30 women from diverse backgrounds. And by the way, I had 28 women, with 6 women were modern Orthodox, 1 ultra-Orthodox, 6 women from the Arab community, and the rest were traditional or secular women. 120 women responded to my outreach call on social media. And I asked myself, maybe it's just my milieu. Maybe this is not representative of Israeli society. I don't know. That was for the semi-structured interviews. Again, I was amazed. I felt like I've touched a nerve and my hunch was correct. So again, this was during the first lockdown, and I was totally committed to my data collection. So I started the semi-structured interviews were held on Zoom. I changed my ethics committee approval, and I did everything in Zoom. And in 2 weeks, I finished interviewing. I did 5 interviews back to back, each one of them at least between 60 to 90 minutes. I finished those 2 weeks and I was dead. I was like, oh my God, I can't touch my research. But I was so into it. And there was lockdown. We were in, what else can I do? So I finished it really, really fast and I was overwhelmed. Women wanted to talk about this, and I felt something is changing at the social scale. This is not just a personal problem of a specific woman. This is a sociological topic which the scientific community in Israel should pay attention to. There is a political, theoretical importance of this research. And I don't want to be arrogant or too proud, but I do think I'm doing something important. On top of being published as a research paper in the future in the scientific journal, this might have an effect on women's lives, on their healthcare providers' contraceptive counseling, on policymakers and stakeholders in the field of family planning. A big change is on its way, and we need to understand it and analyze it. Now, I know this might sound, again, a bit arrogant, but when I published my quantitative survey, I understood just how much this research was needed. As I said, 2,800 women completed the survey in the period of 3 months. It was up from September to December. The survey was divided into 2 categories. The first section asked questions regarding present and past use of contraceptive, what affected their choices, their values regarding their choice, and their satisfaction of their contraception. The second section of the survey referred to healthcare services and provider-patient relationship regarding contraceptive counseling. In this part, I added an open question that Nihaya offered me, my mentor, to do. And the question was there anything else you want to say regarding this topic that you didn't have a chance to answer in a quantitative survey? 150 women wrote something. What they wrote corresponded with the themes I coded in the interviews. Of course, sociodemographic data was collected as well. But I think the thing I want to say is that they balanced each other, they echoed each other. The quantitative and the qualitative methods connected, had a relationship. If I, as a qualitative researcher, always feel like I have to justify being a qualitative researcher, here, my survey actually says that what I did in the interviews and what came up in the interviews is real. It validated what I did in the interviews. Although I have not yet done all my analysis, I can say that what I heard in the qualitative interviews echoed throughout the quantitative survey, which I just said. Both methods strengthen each other, and I have hit the jackpot. I felt and feel still that I have revealed an untold truth. I recovered new data, a new perspective of women's reproductive decision-making in the Israeli context, as we know is a pronatalist context and a multicultural context, and have brought out to the surface things that were hidden, silenced, and secretive. I saw the power in mixed methods approach to feminist health research. I understood the importance of this type of research in a discipline that sometimes values numbers and causes and effect. I understood not only what women do, but also what women want and what their values are regarding family planning choices. So not just the contraceptive they used, but why they were using it. What were their thoughts about choosing the contraceptives? What were their yes and no's regarding contraceptives? I understood, I heard about what women wanted to do as opposed to what they could do, which was a big gap. Rather, it was regarding their sexual partners, the family or culture they came from, or their healthcare providers they go to. The conclusion for now is that women's agency is at the core of their contraceptive use, and that class determines women's ability to choose a form of contraception, to negotiate it, and to practice it. And the reason I'm writing class is that the one thing I noticed in the qualitative and the quantitative part of my research is that almost all the women who participated had at least an undergraduate degree. I research adult women, so it's 18 and above. So in the survey, women who were in the army didn't have an undergrad degree, but most of the women were educated, had a BA at least, which of course made a bias in my research, but that I will acknowledge when I write it. But class was the main determinant to what women choose to use. And when I say class, it also has ethnicity, religiosity, geography, and age, and of course, income. The themes I've heard and then coded during my in-depth semi-structured interviews were appearing again and again in answers women answered in the survey. These two methods enable this to happen. They enhance the research validity and increased my confidence that this research will have an impact in the field I'm a part of, a field with the combination of academia, my personal passion for reproductive justice, and a political aspect that will change social structure and healthcare systems. I hope my research will contribute to the growing knowledge of feminist scholars who conduct research every day, changing women's worlds, one research at a time. This is why the personal is always political and should certainly always be theoretical. Thank you. I'm doing stop share.
Thank you very much, Sharon.
I don't know if this was what we expected, but these thoughts are with me all the time when I'm doing my research, when I talk to women, when I still deal with my master's thesis subjects regarding women's experience with vulvodynia. And the conclusions of that research have unfolded into me being a part of a patient advocacy group regarding this topic, and everything just connects. Every time I'm with a group of women and I say what I'm researching and what I researched, kaboom, happens. And that's the power of qualitative research, and I guess it's the power of mixed methods. So when I say women are abandoning the pill, I now have data to back this say, and it's not just my milieu. And I have to say two things about the data. The abandonment of the pill is a class-oriented issue, but the abandonment goes to two ways, either to use an IUD or to use non-hormonal, non-medical contraception, such as the fertility awareness method, which is a very privileged method, but also condom use. Condom use is the main contraceptive that came out from my survey, which absolutely amazed me because Israeli men in general don't really use condoms. So that would be very interesting to research, further research to understand women's negotiation regarding condom use and what types of relationships enables condom use. And in general, what are men's role in contraceptive choice? It came up a lot in the interviews. It hardly came up in the survey, the men's part in contraceptive use. So that's for further research. And I really hope I will be able to sit myself down and finish writing.
Yeah, it's very important. Yeah, Sharon, thank you very, very much. Sarah wrote a question here in the Q&A. So Sarah, would you like to open your mic and present your question yourself?
Hello, I'm just checking again. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Sharon. It was really interesting, and I would love to read your research whenever it's published and to hear more about your findings. I mean, I'm sorry if this is too much information, but for me, your research really hits home. It's extremely personal. And now you just mentioned that a lot of women are dropping the pill. And I can tell you that, I mean, this is something that I also have done very recently, and instead are using the IUT also because and the non-hormonal one. So all these researches and all the information that I can get personally is really important to me in my case. It's also very interesting to hear that it's class-based, so that there are differences. It doesn't surprise me, but it's still important to have that information out there. So yeah, thank you. And your presentation made me wonder if you noticed when you did the interviews, which was more the qualitative part of your research, if you noticed any prevalent emotions or reactions among the women that were interviewed, and also if there was anything in those reactions and emotions that surprised you personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sarah, where are you from Israel? Where are you from?
I'm Danish, but I've lived in Israel for many years. I'm half Israeli. We know each other on Facebook, and I also.
Oh, Sarah Leonard. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's me.
And I only have one Danish friend on my Facebook, and her name is Sarah, so that's you. But I want to say for the first part that you said is just a year ago, all of a sudden I understood that the abandonment of the pill, the end of the pill era, is a part of the global north. Like, it's not just Israel. I looked at the US. There's a bunch of articles there's an article from 2018 that the millennial generation is not taking the pill. I read a PhD work from London, from England, saying about 30-year-old women renegotiating the pill. So it's a global north issue, because the global south is a bit different. So I'm not going to talk about that. So it's a global issue. And I think it's a good thing, because reality changed. We're not in the 1960s. So we need to ask questions about this. The doctors, by the way, the healthcare providers are in the 1960s. So the clash is very big between healthcare providers and women are just not coming to them. They're not coming to the system. That's another thing that's going on. And the question is, which type of women are not coming to the health system? But that's another topic. Well, I have to say that the thing I didn't expect was that women would cry in the interview. Women cried, and this is about contraception. It's not about sexual violence. It's not about vaginal pain. It's about health practice. And women cried, and I was shocked. And I cry from everything, so it was just, and I was shocked. And I also felt I had great responsibility afterwards as a feminist scholar to see that their well-being is fine. And then on the other side, I'm not their therapist. This is scientific data collection. So it kind of moved between these two. But I do have to say that in my master's thesis, although I interviewed 16 women, two interviews did not get into the research. One of them was a bad recording and also a bad dynamic between me and the woman who was interviewed. The second one was a very difficult interview for me. I interviewed and someone else did the transcript, and I never read it. I could not go back to that interview. I still haven't, and I've done it in 2011, and I haven't gone back to that interview because I went out of that interview, I started crying, I called a colleague, and I told her, what is wrong with this world? And that didn't come in. So I was very surprised that about contraceptive women cried also. It just revealed a lot of the power structure between men and women and how non-male contraceptive is actually male privileged, and how the health counseling, the health service is gendered and medicalized when it comes to contraceptive. The assumption of healthcare providers is that there is no men are partners. Okay, there are no men who would take the responsibility of preventing pregnancies on them. That's like a given. And here I heard women with either great men as partners who take part of it, or really as horrible men, sorry that I'm being so distinct, who really want to preserve the privilege of not having any responsibility on contraceptive use. The second thing that amazed me, data, when it comes to data, not the report that happened in the interviews. I thought that the main issue women are abandoning the pill would be because of side effects of libido. And what I found was that the main issue actually is mental health. And I went to the Danish research from 2017, which is an amazing research. They have a very, very similar health system as ours. It's public, it's widespread, it's accessible. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but they took files, medical files of women, I think maybe like 3 million women, but maybe I'm mistaken. They looked when they started hormonal contraception. And then they saw how many of them started antidepressants and anti-anxiety, and also were hospitalized in mental health institutions. So it was retrospective, okay? And they found either a correlation or a causal between starting hormonal contraception and their mental health deteriorating. And this was only in my qualitative research that women told me why they're stopping the pill, and they described themselves as being crazy. I became crazy. I almost had a psychosis. I didn't want to live. And I was like, how can a medicine that was supposed to be good medicine made so much harm? And that is, I think, a main data that was verified in this Danish research, very, very retrospective quantitative research. So I think that should come into effect when healthcare providers give counseling regarding contraception, and stop dismissing that, because a lot of the times they dismiss women's complaints on side effects. So mental health, that was mind-blowing.
Wow, unbelievable. Wow. And there's another question. Chayuta would like to ask a question. So Chayuta, can you turn on your mic and ask your question?
Yes, can you hear me? Thank you,
Yes.
Sharon. It was very, very interesting. I was wondering about the survey. How deeply you felt that you need to follow all the rules of quantitative research while mixing, because you mentioned that you wasn't sure about the participant, if the sample was representative. Did you check the validity, reliability? Because quantitative researchers are very strict about these areas.
Yes. So first I would say it's a very simple statistics. I'm not doing, I want to know what women use, why they use it, what they used in the past, and kind of interact it with sociodemographic statistics. Like, I'm not doing very hard statistics. So we did do validity to that. But you're right. I have a good mentor for that. Nihaya, my mentor, Professor Nihaya Daoud, that's her main things she does is quantitate. And she helped me a lot with that. She helped me a lot of times. She said things and I was like, oh yeah, that really improved my survey. So we went back and forth, and I did a few samples with friends and stuff like that, things that were very obvious to me because I'm 15 years in the field of family planning. People said, what does this mean? And I was like, what? This is blah, blah, blah. And then I had to reframe, like, as I was writing to someone who's not in the field. The other interesting thing is I did the survey in Hebrew and in Arabic. So I translated it, but then I also had to culturally translate it, not just literally translate it. Because, for instance, the first question was, what are you using? I think it was, are you using a contraceptive right now? Or do you use contraceptive while sleeping with men? Or I don't remember exactly, but I said men and not man. And I had to change it, translating it to Arabic, because you can't say having sex with men, okay? And that was, I did adaptations in Arabic. But we did do validity, and the other thing you said, which I don't know the word in English, but I know it in Hebrew, mahimanut ve'tokef. I just don't know the second word in English. So I did do it, but it's a very simple survey. But the other thing is I also did outreach for certain groups I felt had underrepresentation. So I wanted to see about women from Ethiopian origins because of there was a big controversy regarding the contraceptive shot in 2008. And then there was, never mind, I won't go into it. I wanted to see if Ethiopian women still get the shot as opposed to other populations. So I went and found allies within like Ethiopian women groups, and they published it. So I got a little bit of that. I got a lot of modern Haredi, modern ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox that answered, also through colleagues and friends that just passed it out. And yes, ultra-Orthodox women use contraception in different types of forms, different types of ways. But then I also had a lot of women from Anglo background. So a lot of American, British, Australian, South African women who living in Israel, which totally made my survey biased. But I'll have to acknowledge it when I write it. When I write it, I know this. I know it's not representative. But I did do an effort, and I also had 2 questions in the socio-demographic ones where, or 3 questions was, where were you born, where your mother was born, and when your father was born? Because I also wanted to see Jewish ethnicity, because I know Mizrahi or Sephardic in Ashkenazi is usually not a category, but I wanted to see that category because it comes together with class and education and geography and income in the Israeli context. So I did get Sephardic women like answer a lot. So it kind of made a contra to the Anglo women who answered. And also there was a correlation between the Anglos and religiosity. So a lot of them were modern Orthodox that were totally abandoning the pill. So that also kind of made my survey a bit biased, but I will acknowledge all of this. But this is the first data collected in 3 decades about like anything regarding contraceptive use. So it's a start, it's not the end. And I hope the Kupot Cholim will want to work with me later and retrieve the real data from there. They won't though, I'm already telling you.
Wait. As echoing the title of our next presentation, don't put the cart behind don't put the cart before the horse.
Okay.
So I think that you have to. You said before that your data is going to be very powerful because it's a mixed method study. So turn that into a reality so as to convince also the HMOs who should be very, very interested, because again, if a woman starts avoiding the health services because a very important issue to her, she will probably avoid it for other important issues that are important also for the HMO itself. Yes. So there is a vested interest in both women's interest and the HMO themselves interest. So
I hope.
Keep up your optimistic view, Sharon. And I want to thank you again for your presentation and for sharing with us a work in progress. I think we will be all very glad to hear about how does this develop and how you keep integrating both the quantitative and the qualitative parts of this really timely and meaningful research. Thank you very much.
Thank you.